since we've got a nice day on tap, supposed to be in the upper 50s with some good sun. We'll be doing some work on the Tri-lam bow. So today's the perfect day to get started on our peaking and tweaking. Hey guys, thanks for joining me again this week in the shop. We have left off with a fully tillered Tri-lam bow last week, and this week we get our tip overlays on, tips narrowed, grip worked out, all of the little details in the peaking and tweaking process, as well as shooting her in. So stick around, let's get started. Alright guys, here are first few shots out of this bow. There's not too much reverberation left in this bow after the shot. Feels pretty good. And for what it's worth, I am aiming for the bullseye. I haven't made a bow this heavy in a while, so insofar, things seem to be going pretty well with this bow. Kind of liking the way the grip section's kind of turning out, the way it looks. Certainly feels great. Might have to do just a little bit of addition right in here. I might be gluing on just one little bit more to fill out that palm swell. But at this point, I want to say I have probably put, maybe 30 arrows through it. And we have thinned out the tips to get some alignment work handled. Upper gap is right at about 7 inches. Lower gap is reading at about 6 3/4 fat. So we're still sitting on about 1/4 to 3/16 inch positive tiller on this bow, which is pretty much what it had to get started, so I'm not losing that aspect of it, and for that reason we're just going to keep putting arrows through it until we find a reason to do anything different. Every time we get a little bit of warm weather going on, we get a pretty hefty breeze to go with it. And shooting out back can be kind of a challenge. But in any event, I put another 20 arrows through that bow. And still maintaining its positive tiller between 3/16 and 1/4 of an inch. Feels really pretty good. I can feel the release in my bow hand. So a couple things. One, need to get through and just kind of get some of this angular part of the grip work handled, because that can be a part of it. But in addition to that, we're going to really turn our attention to thinning these tips out pretty significantly. So we're already, you know, we're relatively narrow, but we're really going to narrow these guys out, and then put on some overlays. So part of my effort to get the grip kind of filled out just a little bit on this backside, I have a very, very thin wedge, another wedge of Ipe, because I want to kind of keep that appearance through the grip. Just a real thin wedge that I'm going to glue on to the belly side of the grip here. I'm going to turn some attention to putting overlays at my limb tips now. You can see that I just kind of ran it on the sander to get a nice flat edge, gluing surface basically, so that I can put an overlay on here. Something basically like this. But I wanted to take a minute and talk a little bit about this little line that we're seeing right here, where the bamboo ends and the white oak begins, or the core, right? And you can see that right here are the string knocks. And I have done different kinds of tapers, etc., on these limb tips, on the tips of my bows, and have found that when this taper ends ahead of your knock points, you run the risk of actually breaking the bow, like right here, or the backing giving up, you know, giving up its hold right where like the bamboo ends up in here. And even if the overlay goes over it, I've had it fail. So I know that there's some workmanship and materials issues that go on in there, but I would tell you guys, like, in the beginning, as you are putting on tip overlays, I would avoid cutting back your backing to ahead of your knock points. It's just inviting trouble. All right, so you can see, hopefully you can see the profile on that. And that will, of course, right on the bow like such. So it makes this transition very easy when it comes time to trying to blend your edges together. Little extra measure right at that transition point. And voila. All right, I got tips put in, or at least the nocks put together here, and been shooting quite a few times. I want to say I've probably at this point put probably 60 arrows, 50 or 60 arrows through this bow today, and that is since putting in the tip overlays. And as far as our tiller is concerned, I'm at about a 7 inches fat there, about a 7 1/16. This is the top limb here is at about a 7 3/8 or so. So a little on the wider side of that. So we're darn near a 1/4 inch, 3/16 still. Positive tiller on this bow. Seems to be shooting really pretty well. The grip is a little on the slight side for me. It's pretty thin and narrow. It's got good depth to it, but it needs a grip. It just needs a grip to feel good. So I know once I get a grip on there, you know, the tactile finish of the palm on this thing's going to be just fine. Shoots incredibly fast, but then again, it's a nearly 60-pound bow. I haven't measured the weight on it, the draw weight on it recently. It's probably lost a couple pounds, simply because I know it's taking a little bit more set as I run through the peak and tweak process. So with the tips, I put these overlays on, which are I don't know, probably 3/16 of an inch, 1/4 inch thick there. This bow, when unstrung, sits with just these tips resting on the table. So from the original finish, we're taking probably another, you know, 1/4 inch of set from where we were. But at this point, I'm well over 100 arrows through this bow, and it's still performing very well. Did a little bit of truing up on the tips as well to keep everything in alignment and thin them down. As far as narrowing is concerned, you can see here we're starting to get pretty narrow on these tips, and I'll take all the blockiness away, and that's really going to make them look very nice, and then B, take a little bit of mass out of the equation. So at this point, I'm just going to start cleaning up edges, take down the corners on the limbs all the way up and down the lengths. I think we are lined up. We are shooting very well. We're basically tweaked out, shot in. So now all just kind of the finished details on the corners and edges and everything else. Okay, so here's the rough shaped tips and the overlays right there. Just a real quick removal, just to kind of take the angular piece and some of this chunkiness off, is what I do first. So really it's almost like sharpening a pencil the way I do it, but really take a lot off the belly side to kind of supplement the back side, and then we'll take and round this off really well, kind of teardrop shape that right there to finish it out. So really take all of that clunkiness off of those tips. We have gone through and removed the rind on the back of the bow here, really smoothed over and rounded our edges, as well as shaped out the tips of the bow here. So you can see that we're basically, you know, in in the very final stages in terms of constructing this guy. The grip area needs a little bit of final sanding. The grain in the ash piece here is kind of open and porous and being difficult to manage with just steel tools. There has not been a piece of sandpaper to hit this bow yet. So that is, of course, the final piece. But now that we've got everything for all intents and purposes finished here, gonna go out and put a few more arrows through it. All right, guys. Wrapping up the peeking and tweaking portion of this build. She's looking really pretty good. Grip area looks pretty nice. Bow itself is 1 3/16 inches wide at the fade, 65 inches tip to tip, or knock to knock rather. Really, really looking good by and large. Took a little more set than maybe I would have preferred, but that's kind of the nature of a Tri-lam bow. All that's left is sanding, finishing, put on a grip, string, the usual rot. But when we measured it originally, it was about 18 ounces and some change. We added some tip overlays and then you know, worked down the tips and the grip and everything else. Finished out at 16.9 ounces on a, what's probably going to finish out at about a 53-55 pound bow. Pretty good, 16 ounces, I'll take it. So there we go. We will get on about the remainder of the finishing work, really just topping it off and bringing her home next week. Thanks for joining me this week, guys, and I will see you next week.